Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. I hope you guys are ready for the shizzy to hit the fizzy because it's right around the corner. You see, there's an importance for us in saying that it's right around the corner. There's an importance in communicating and driving the point home that there's an imminence to SHDF, because if you give people even an ounce of hope, they simply will not prepare. Just like Joel Skousen says, I don't want to bite the rhymes of a person who is from the, what generation would he be from? The silent generation? He might be a bit of a late boomer, but I don't want to be biting people's rhymes. Joel Skousen said, if you give people any hope, they simply will not prepare. If I was to tell you in the next 5 years, there's a 99% chance that the shit's going to hit the fan, well, maybe some people would prepare, but a lot of people would say 1%? 5 years? I got time, right? So we communicate the imminence. The downside of that approach, of course, is that you invariably are going to burn people out. People are going to get desensitized. And unfortunately, as my buddy Praxis Prepper had said, he put it very nicely on the channel. I've said it before, but he said it in a way which was much better. He said that in the Hollywood movies, anytime you see a disaster movie, the shorter the time frame they can condense it in, the more exciting it is. Okay, so if you take like a zombie apocalypse, like if an apocalypse that happens in 3 days is way more exciting than one that happens in 10 years. So if you keep condensing the time frame, it gets all the more exciting, right? So this is why Hollywood does that. But the reality is, when collapse happens in any civilization, it tends to be a very drawn-out process. But if you were just to take the last 3 years and condense it into 3 days, it would make an amazing action-packed film, okay? Starring yours truly, hopefully. But this is what I'm trying to say. Don't get burnt out, because by next year, yes, the global recession is coming. There's going to be a major world war that breaks out. There's going to be a war in the South China Sea. There will be a war unless China takes Taiwan. If China takes Taiwan, there's still going to be a war. It's just going to be a global war. There's a war for quantum computing supremacy. There's a war for AI supremacy. There's a war for semiconductor supremacy. There is going to be a war over fertilizers and resources. The price of food is going to continue to skyrocket. 14% food inflation. That's just what they're telling us, not including shrinkflation. Okay, all of the agricultural inputs, the costs of those things are only going to continue to increase. The war with Russia and Ukraine is not getting any better anytime soon. Even Jan Stoltenberg said that the war is going to go on for a long, long time. Okay, you got Putin talking about committing an extra 85,000 troops into the fight. Things are getting wild, okay? And never mind the little stuff. There's a reason why I didn't talk about the railroad strike, guys. Don't worry about things that can be mitigated by human relations. See, there's a certain set of our crises that we're facing that are simply untenable. They're things that there really is no solution to. The railroad strike, I was pretty confident that that was going to be a big nothing burger. That's why I didn't even really talk about it. It was a footnote in my videos. Not that it couldn't have grave implications. But the thing is, we're in a political season, right? And there was no way in hell that they're going to not find some sort of solution, especially if it's something as simple as just putting a few more dollars an hour on a person's paycheck, okay? So the situations that I'm preparing for are ones that there simply is no solution for, okay? Climate, conflict, contagion are going to intersect and create a confluence of forces that are simply going to overwhelm the system, and we are not going to be able to continue with our current way of life. There's going to be a substantial downgrade in all of our ways of life, starting with this winter. Look at all the elephants in the room right now. Russia supplies Europe with gas, and they're just like, oh, well, we got this turbine and we just can't fix it. You know, I mean, you really think they can't fix a turbine? These guys are, making Sarmat missiles that can travel 10,000 kilometers. You think they can't fix a turbine? Come on. There's all these elephants in the room. You think they couldn't target civilian critical infrastructure if they didn't want to? I mean, they just did it literally within 24 hours of retreating from Kharkiv, okay? So there's all of these things that are not being said right now, right? Like this idea that the U.S. is going to send $4.5 billion dollars worth of ammunition and armaments to Taiwan, but that doesn't violate the one China policy. I mean, and they're actually saying that. It's like doublethink, right? It's like you're giving them weapons to fight the Chinese, but it doesn't violate the Chinese one China policy. Anyways, so there's a lot of things coming down the pike. We know there's going to be a big recession. You can bet, you can set your watch to this. There is going to be massive civil unrest. You got people fighting about mermaids. Okay, you got this Rumble platform blowing up. You got Andrew Tate blowing up, he's like the red pill rock, if you want to call him that. I mean, guys, civil unrest is coming. We are the 99%, 2.0 is coming. It's all coming down the pike. Food prices are going to skyrocket. I mean, skyrocket in the coming years ahead. The only thing that's going to go down might be, the cost of things that nobody can really afford anymore. I mean, even China, you got them on lockdown. Still, hundreds of millions of people on lockdown currently. The weather anomalies are only going to continue. We know these things are going to happen, but if we don't communicate it with a sense of imminence, people simply won't prepare, even though it's probably going to be drawn out. It's going to be a long, dark winter for a lot of people. And I think right now, it takes a very special person who can see that these things are coming down the road and not to succumb to the ebb and flows of the market, on a day-to-day basis. It's kind of like long-term investing, like long-term, stock investments. It's very hard to just ignore and hodl. It's very hard to ignore the oscillations of the market on a day-to-day or weekly basis. Just like the day traders or the swing traders. It's very hard to just ignore it and just know that shit's going to hit the fan. We don't know when it's going to happen, but we know it's inevitable because of the equation. I mean, it's built into the math that it's inevitable. Like, I don't see the world changing anytime soon. You got the price of lithium, which is sky high. The price of lithium is like 10 times what it was when it was at its lows in 2020. It's about 3 times higher than it was last year. How are we going to make electric cars when the price of lithium is 10 times what it was? When you got all these rare earth metals that are required, when China isn't producing solar panels, you just, there's things that are just untenable right now. Okay, so China found helium-3 on the moon. I don't know if you guys ever seen the movie Moon with, I can't remember what his name is, but it's actually a pretty trippy movie. And I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's kind of dystopian, apocalyptic, but you should check it out. It's just called Moon. And that movie predicted all of this. It predicted the China helium-3 thing. Are they going to be able to do that, in a matter of time, which is, I don't think so. I don't think it's going to really happen or in my lifetime. Could we do fusion? Could we do helium-3? I don't know, maybe. There's solutions. But there's some things that are just untenable to our current way of life. We are not all going to be able to continue to consume in the same manner that we're doing now. Whether it's a green thing, whether the government prevents us from doing it and Klaus Schwab and his buddies, or whether the environment just says, no more, sorry, we've run out of stuff, guys. Or whether it's a war that breaks out, something, it's not even something. When people say something's going to happen, that's too ambiguous. I mean, I could list off 20 things that will happen, like that are inevitable to happen, okay? So, anyways, let's just get right to the news. What the hell? I've been talking for 9 minutes. I ain't talked about nothing. My God. Grocery prices up 14%, not including shrinkflation. Remember that. Doesn't include shrinkflation. Doesn't include the cost of gas in your car to drive to the grocery store as well. Now, big bad news in the markets. FedEx lost 20% of their stock valuation in one day today. That's unreal. Apparently, that's a bellwether for global recession. Like, I mean, everything else wasn't, but FedEx, so now it's basically official. Now everybody's accepted, okay, it's a global recession. It'll be interesting to see if the Biden administration has any sort of sway over what Powell does before the election starts. You know, maybe they might just, you know, push back maybe they'll surprise people. They'll only raise interest rates by, you know, 50 basis points or 25. Yeah, they might do something like that. You never know. That's when you really know who's in charge. But personally, I think both sides are part of the same coin, and it doesn't matter who you put up into office. At this point in time, there's just situations that are untenable. I'm just prepping for the civil unrest. I mean, people are fighting over mermaids, man. That's all I can say. I mean, you literally have a situation where people can't eat, and they're fighting over the color of a mermaid. Guys, prepare for shit hit the fan. New York City has reached its highest level of homelessness since the Great Depression. Now, I don't know if that's proportional. They're saying 80,000 people. I'm pretty sure there's a lot more people living in New York City now. So, yeah, I think that might not be exactly accurate, but that's still pretty bad. Lithium prices at an all-time high. This is not getting enough attention. Guys, if you need a power system, a solar power system, this bump in prices here, it hasn't been felt by the market yet because a lot of suppliers are still using inventory that they built up around here. Like, I'm talking about the portable power generation systems that are just saturating the market lately. A lot of those companies are relying on old stock. Once that stock runs out, the price of these things, these portable home generators, is going to skyrocket, and the inflation is going to be realized there. You have Russia and the Chinese doing more joint patrols in the Pacific Ocean. That's great, isn't it? Ships will drill skills of joint tactical maneuvering, organization of communications, practical artillery shooting, and flights of ship-based helicopters. There was a big convention in Uzbekistan. You basically had Putin, Xi, Modi, all the big, non-G7 countries getting together and saying, you know what, man, we're done with this dollar shit. If you guys wonder why the price of gold is down, it's simply because of a strong dollar. I mean, it's almost directly correlated. Strong dollar, low price of gold. Crappy dollar, high price of gold. So it's pretty much tied to the price of gold. So I am not at all worried about the price of gold. It's almost, the price of gold is going to be what it's been for thousands of years, and that ain't changing in our lifetime. It's not going to go wildly up, because if it goes wildly up, that just means that the price of the dollar has correspondingly come down. That's what a lot of people don't say. Like, anybody who's investing in gold to get rich, just remember that by the time gold is worth $3,000, that means that your dollar will be worth twice as little, basically, right? It'll be worth half as much, I should say. Oh, man, I'm notorious for mispronouncing things and making little blunders like that, but it's all right. It's all about the analytical. It's not about the minutia, right? Yeah, Washington's going to send $4 billion to Taiwan. China is now sanctioning bosses of U.S. weapons contractors. The companies, Boeing and Raytheon, who are sending this stuff to Taiwan, China is starting to sanction them. So get ready for another sanctions war. We have, China and Russia, who are willing to work together and shoulder responsibilities as a great power, play a leading role and introduce stability and positive energy into a world dominated by chaos. Well, I wouldn't go that far. See, there's a lot of Russian sycophants and Chinese fanboys out there who think that it's all going to be sunshine and rainbows. It's not. Really, we're in a situation right now, and everybody admits it. People say, oh, well, it's a dirty laundry and the US dollar is the best. It's, there's many different metaphors to explain it, the lesser of two evils. Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, really, when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, somebody's going to rule the world. And from the U.S. military-industrial complex perspectives, it might as well be them. And I would have to, reluctantly agree, because I don't want to be under a communist rule. Even though some people might say, "Oh, don't worry, it's gonna be a utopia, just like Stalin." I don't think so. Yeah, so U.S. is banning export and re-export of quantum computing services to Russia. Putin, apparently, actually, it's not Putin, it's the Chechen leader who is calling for 85,000 troops to counter Ukrainian attacks. This Kadyrov guy. It's interesting to see. This Kadyrov guy, you know, may rise in popularity. I don't know what his relationship with it is with Putin, but, you know, there might be... I don't know if how strong that relationship is. I mean, could this Kadyrov guy actually rise to power within Russia? I don't know. Anyways, he's saying that he wants forced mobilizations and martial law, basically to expedite the whole Russian military operation. There was a channel who came out with a video yesterday. I'm not going to say who they are. Not yet, anyways, unless they make more BS videos. They had suggested that the Russian people would not tolerate a general mobilization. For starters, even in one of the so-called freest countries in the world, they were able to implement a military draft. I'm talking about the United States. In Vietnam, they were able to institute a draft where they conscripted you to fight in the war, and if you didn't go and fight, then you went to jail. Okay? You don't think that in what we've deemed a authoritarian society, that they're not going to be able to pull that off somehow? Especially if everybody's struggling in the way they're saying. You don't think they could provide them enough incentives to go and fight and die? You know, you don't think they could pay them enough? Supposedly they're paying criminals now to go over there, and I'm wondering if that's some kind of dirty, underhanded tactic to just unleash the dogs of war, you know, on the population there, to instill fear in people, or just to use these guys as cannon fodder. And it's just I guess it's a way to kill two birds with one stone, literally, because you're taking the bad guys of your own society and you're putting them into a society where they'll likely be killed. If you don't know what I'm referring to, the Russians are conscripting, or they're giving prisoners the option. They're saying, hey, you can go and die on the front lines of Donbass or wherever else we decide to put you, or you could stay here and wither away and die in this jail cell. And they're talking about maximum security, guys who've committed all kinds of heinous atrocities, okay, to unleash them onto the population. Now, people are saying, oh, they're doing this because they're short of manpower. They don't want to mobilize the population. It has nothing to do with that. People are as compliant as they ever were. People will comply, but it's definitely not a can of worms you want to open if you don't have to. But if you have now people calling for it, and all you need is one event, all you need is one attack on Russia that resonates with people emotionally enough to want them to push for a general mobilization. And not even necessarily a general mobilization. I mean, they're already talking about putting in more troops, whatever you want to call it, okay? Now it's almost convenient that we've called it a general mobilization, because they can say, oh, no, it's not. It's just, you know, it's just this, right? Yeah. And these Chechen guys, it's like 10,000 Khabibs going to fight in Ukraine. It's crazy. They say, this is the leader, Kadyrov. He says, we have to destroy them, he added. We did not start a war with them only to retreat or surrender. We will win if we die, because we will all be in heaven. So these guys are fighting from a religious perspective. One might ask, well, how can you be so motivated to fight in a war when, you know, it's not, how can the Ukrainians be more motivated than these other guys? Well, it's, you know, we've never really fought a war on our own border. At least not in our generation. So we don't know what it's like, especially if you have that religious sentiment in there as well. That's kind of the icing on the cake from a military motivation point of view. You got clashes breaking out in Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, as well as Armenia and Azerbaijan. You have, what else do you got going on here? You got Russian submarines training in the Arctic, firing off missiles. You got Putin making a direct warning saying that, hey, you know, we may have to up the ante a little bit here. He's talking about terror attacks. So this is what they're going to basically call it, right? They're going to say this is a anti-terrorist increase in forces to deal with these terrorists. And this is very interesting what he says here, okay? So President Putin has said that before drawing any conclusions about the Kharkov withdrawal, one should wait and see how it ends. I think he shouldn't have said that, because that kind of lets the cats out of the bag. And even the Kadyrov guy, the Chechen guy, said that we're going to surprise the Ukrainians, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. I mean, maybe you shouldn't say that if it's really a surprise. It's not very strategic. But they played it up, right? You see that even the Russians are playing up their withdrawal as a defeat in some ways. And they're doing that for a reason, I think. Because the only way you can have a feint like that, where you're faking so you want the enemy to think you're up to something, is to really play it up. Like, oh yeah, you beat us. Come on in, bring all your guys and concentrate them all right in this one region. And we promise we won't start targeting them with weapons, because we don't have anything. See, we're out. Anyways, who knows? Yeah. What else do we got going on here? Okay. This is what I'm talking about. Russian analysts and military experts are now openly admitting failure and calling for immediate drastic changes. And the Russian military of defense and secret services of the country are charged with the failure. So Senator Igor Morozov has said humanity is over. Now the real war begins. The phase of conducting a special military operation with Ukraine and the collective West has ended. Today we must understand that the real war begins. We can show no mercy for anyone anymore. First of all, we must escalate our strikes against critical infrastructure in such a way that one area after another, Ukraine is plunged into darkness. By December, he says, 20 million Ukrainians will have to flee to the West, to the European Union. This is our goal and task that we have to complete. If all of Ukraine is plunged into cold and darkness, they will have no fuel, the reserve armies will not help them, and no one will be able to deliver equipment or ammunition. These strikes must continue for 2, 3, 5, or 6 months in a series without leaving any gas station untouched. So that's what's coming. You guys want to know why I talk about this issue so much, Ukraine-Russia thing? People say, well, people don't talk about other wars, and it's because of the nuclear thing, primarily. But it also is, this war, it's different from all the other. It's different from the Afghanistan war in one, numerically speaking, in terms of the overall deaths. Like, we don't even know what the casualties are. We're talking possibly, on the really upper end crazy figure, we're talking like 1 million casualties already. Who knows how many people have died in such a small window of time. So, although it might not seem that much different from a lot of these other wars, whether it was Iraq or wherever else, this one, the stakes are much, much higher. Obviously, as the specter of nuclear war looms overhead, with the global decoupling, the eradication of the petrodollar, which is going to create a lot of problems because the dollar is way too high right now. That's going to lead to much, much higher prices for many, many developing countries. And I think people are just going to say, you know what? We don't need this dollar anymore. What do you guys think in the comment section below? What do you think is going to happen, man? Oh, this is interesting. Germany's BASF plant. Apparently, this is a 10 square kilometer plant. It's massive. In fact, they have their own bus service there, okay? It's 125 production plants that are all an interconnected value chain. So a drop in gas prices from Gazprom could cause this place to shut down entirely. Now, in terms of what these guys produce there and why it will definitely affect you as well, they produce chemicals that are used in anything from toothpaste to vitamins, From building insulation to nappies, it's one of the world's biggest manufacturers of ibuprofen for painkillers. The automobile industry makes up about 80% of its sales. So this is going to be a big, big deal for Germany if they have to deindustrialize, because they are going to have to prioritize heat for their residents. So you may see a situation where it's just a bunch of people huddled around a fire with no work. So where's the food going to come from? How is this going to affect the price of food next year if you have to shut down all this industry? And even if it does, even if we do have peace at some point, reindustrializing will take a minute, right? It's not going to happen overnight. Anyways, folks, we got a fun video coming up for you tomorrow, because like I say, you know, you got to walk that fine line. You know, on the one hand, we need to communicate the gravity of the situation, but Hollywood has trained people that these things happen overnight. They don't happen overnight. So don't get burnt out. Enjoy life. Live your life. You know, I mean, today could be your last day on this earth. So don't just live constantly in a state of panic and anxiety, but, you know, realize that the shit's going to hit the fan someday, and we don't know what day it's going to come, and it's likely going to come in slow motion. And in hindsight, when the smoke finally clears, you'll be like, oh man, that actually happened pretty fast. You know, just like I say, condense the last 3 years into 3 days. And there's a good video topic for you. Somebody who wants to steal another idea from me. Do last 3 years, 2019 to 2022, and each year make it a day. So at 7 a.m., you know, the Australian wildfires start. Australia essentially burns down. At 8 a.m., there's a risk of World War III starting because they killed the Iranian general Soleimani. At 9 a.m. COVID starts, right? And that goes on all the way to like the third day, right? And, you know, you have all these things happening in between, you know. Anyways, will be a cool idea. You guys take care. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned tomorrow. We got some fun stuff coming. Canadian Prepper out.